Actually,
Switched over.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the September meeting of the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission. This meeting is being recorded.
Maybe just mention that it's in person and hybrid.
It is both in person and hybrid at the trailer at 131 Pleasant Street. And I guess the first thing is let's do a roll call. So if I call your name, just tell me you're here. Christina? Here. Nat?
Here.
John?
Here.
Mike?
Here.
Joe?
Here.
Hillary? Here. Liza? Here. Bert?
Here.
Brooke?
I'm here.
All right. And as staff, we have Megan Trudell.
Here.
Leslie Snell. Here. Mike Burns.
I'm here.
And Holly Backus is our guest speaker.
Present.
All right. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Okay, so Mike made the motion, Nat seconded.
No,
Oh, John seconded.
John did. No,
Sorry.
John made the motion.
Oh, John made the
Thanks.
motion.
Did I catch that?
Yeah.
Simultaneously with you.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, John made the motion, Nat seconded. Christina. Aye. Nat,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Hillary.
Aye.
Liza. Aye. Bert,
Aye.
Brooke,
Aye.
and as the chair, I also vote aye. Do we have any public comment for items not on the agenda? Okay, we also, I guess, note, I don't think there's anyone from the public here, but, all right. Moving on to announcements, I'll turn it over to staff. I know there's a couple things.
All right, I'll do a few and then I'm gonna leave two for Megan. So we have the special town meeting that's happening, and everyone knows about that, November 4th at 5 p.m. It's just an FYI. The planning board's having their public hearing on the short-term rental articles on October 9th. So if anyone's interested, who's not on the board, that's when that's taking place. 2026 meeting schedule is in the packet. You all do not need to take any action on that, but just take a look at the dates, and if there's any, obvious conflicts, like let us know now so that we can plan ahead for that. And then we'll get a final schedule out to you a little bit later. This one's not listed, but we finally heard from the governor that Jeff Carlson was appointed to be on the Ocean Management Plan Committee. He was one of the people that you recommended to the governor, and that's a 1-year appointment. I sent a letter out to you all this afternoon.
Sure. So just a brief update on the UMass housing transfer study. They launched a survey last week that's targeted to area businesses on both islands. So we distributed the survey link to the Builders Association and pushed it out through the Chamber of Commerce to the Community Foundation. The town maintains an email database of businesses. It was pushed out there as well. I expect some social media posts to be going out this week. And that survey will close on October the 6th. So again, it's not targeted towards all members of the public. It's focused at business owners and people that run nonprofits, government entities. So more to come, I guess, on the results of that after the survey closes on the 6th, then they have time to analyze the data. The NPMEDC was asked to co-sponsor a virtual event with CHAPA, which is the Citizens Housing and Planning Association. It's their annual Cape and Islands regional meeting, so we will be co-sponsoring that virtual meeting on November the 6th from 10 till 11:30. So I will circulate the registration link, and that also will be pushed out on social media as the date gets closer.
Great. All right, moving on. Our next item on the agenda is we are going to have a presentation from Holly Backus. She's the town preservation planner, and she's our certified local government coordinator, and she's going to give us kind of an overview of what's going on with preservation with the town. So without further ado, kick it over to you, Holly, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for having me. Thank you, commissioners. First off, I just wanted to just remind everybody about our historic district. Our historic district is both a local and national historic district in 1966, and of course, our local in 1950. Some of the things from a preservation planning perspective that we do is review the COAs for compliance with building with Nantucket in mind, our Secretary of Interior standards, support local preservation initiatives, review Section 106, which could be both the HDC and the Historical Commission, apply for those important grants for preservation, liaise with both commissions. Both commissions are the Certified Local Government, that federal preservation planning program that we have been a part of since 2001, and of course liaise with other commissions or in other departments. So this past fiscal year, we are required to provide a report to the state, to Massachusetts Historical Commission. And this past fiscal year, the HDC reviewed over 2,000 certificate of appropriateness. The Historical Commission continued their review of historic tax credit applications and actually put on 137 historic survey forms onto our record keeping here and at the state. And with that, and you all probably remember me before you a couple of years ago when we completed the historic property survey plan. This is a functionality from our certified local government status, and is something that was done through the Historical Commission. We received funding for that, and our consultant was PAL. That's going to be our guiding document for the next decade at least, but of course it's a public and private partnership to move forward and survey those resources. We have a couple of projects that have been completed. The fiscal 22 project saw the 137 new forms. So those are what we call HDC surveys. They're more in depth than the old 1988-89 surveys. We are actually going to be getting our RFQ for the fiscal 23 project. Unfortunately, we couldn't get a responsive vendor for that the last couple times that we've tried. So hopefully, cross our fingers, we'll be moving forward with that. We have applied for CPC funding. We have been doing some ongoing work with the Preservation Institute Nantucket from the University of Florida. For those of you not familiar with PIN, it's been around since 1972. One of the oldest field school program within the country for historic preservation. I'm actually a grad myself. And they started working in the West Monomoy, New Guinea neighborhood this past year and into the summer. This is more the reconnaissance level surveying. We need to get all that history and research, have some public engagements. And then this next fiscal year, we have applied for those much needed survey forms that the PIN students will help work on. And then of course that will be overseen through the Historical Commission as well as for final approval and review by the Massachusetts Historical Commission, or the SHPO. And another item that we've applied for with CPC is the historic farms. In our survey plan, we outlined from the Gardner map of, I believe, 1946, took some history from the 1850s of the farms that are scattered throughout the island. That's a project that the PIN students have been working on, and hopefully we will see some survey forms or area forms for that. Something very exciting. And then in this past year, we've also applied for out of the Wind Farm Fund to survey the very important town-owned historic resources. And that would include any type of resource that's a building, structure, monument, any type of historic resource that the town owns. And those are scattered across the island. So it makes it really difficult for us to hire a consultant through the MHC program. So we thought that this wind farm fund would be the best course of action to do that. And our RFQ has been posted. We've received a respondent, and we're going to be reviewing that hopefully and move forward with it. And then a couple of other projects that we've applied for CPC is to update the all-important building with Nantucket in mind, codify that with all the addendums that have been done since pretty much the 90s. And then we have a bunch of historic aerials here at Plus that we want to get digitized, not only have them available for the general public through the town's website, but also with the NHA. So we've partnered with them on that. Wanted to show you what these all-important surveys look like. So if you go to the town's GIS, there is a layer called MHC inventory forms. This is where you find a lot of the 88 surveys that were done back in the first, I think the HDC received a $10,000 grant back then from MHC to start the survey work. And then in 89, they continued, but the 89 effort never got available to the state. It was something I guess the town decided to do on their own. So not only do you see all these triangles up on the website, on the GIS from the 88 effort, but you've seen some new ones over time through our survey effort. Anytime the Nantucket Preservation Trust comes before the select board for a all-important preservation restriction, they're required, or an easement, they're required to do a Form B as well. So those surveys are updated, and you'll actually see a little stars on their website for it. Once you click on it, you'll see this Massachusetts Historical Resource Information Macris. Click on that, and this is the page that pops up. Once you see that page, it gives you some identification of the property, the name, if there is one, the NAN survey, which is something that I reference quite a bit with the HDC in my reviews for the commission. And then you want to click on this little link here, and that will actually take you directly to the PDF, which will look like this. And it will have usually multiple pages. This is the cover page of all the macro surveys that are available within the state's database. But if I can take you, can you all see my computer still?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. All right. You're welcome. Want to make sure I didn't lose you. So this is it. Go to the themes, click MHC inventory form. And then if you wanted to do, let's see, 54 Main Street is one. Maybe you should have.
Holly, are you expecting us to see your computer screen? Because we still see your slide.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
okay. I'm sorry.
Oh, I didn't know, that's what it's asking.
All right. Let me get back out and get back in. Sorry, guys. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So over here in themes is where I clicked on it. And you can see the screen changes when you click on it.
This
So
is our
any
town GIS.
town GIS, yes.
Thank you.
So you'll see all these triangles I was referencing. Those are all the surveys. Then you see these ones that have stars on them. Those are the ones that have a preservation easement or restriction. But if you click on it, this will take you to that page. The inventory is right under here, says PDF, and you click on that. And then the PDF format will come down, and then you can click on it, and there it is. This is one for the Methodist Church from actually a way long time ago, but that's what I wanted to show you all. That's it.
John, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Holly. Just if you take Monomoy as an example, and only as an example, but those two pieces of work that are going on, phase 1 and phase 2, is the Civic Association aware of that? What we're doing? Is it of any I'm sure it's of interest to them, but I wonder if they're involved at all.
I'm not sure about the Civic Association. I will tell you that both the Nantucket Preservation Trust, the Nantucket Historical Association, as well as the Boston Museum of African History, they're also involved. University of Massachusetts, their archaeologist has also been involved. There's a lot of undocumented history within this neighborhood, and this recon survey is really, I foresee it being the catalyst moving forward, because a lot of the history on Nantucket is not really been done. There's a lot of layers, if you will. There's structures that were built that are no longer there. So reaching out to the neighborhoods is really important. We did that. I think the last fall, we had an open house, and a lot of members of the community came in and gave us some either history or photographs, and that's been something that has been very helpful. But I do take your point on that.
Yeah, I think
I'll notate that.
Just taking Monomoy as an example, I think it would be great to let David Ernst, the president of the Civic Association, know what it is and what he's designed to do. And, they may not be able to give you any particular help, but I think they would really appreciate knowing what's being done.
But it's West Monomoy, so
Yeah.
that's like the area around the African Meeting House.
Right.
Not,
It's not.
The other side.
Monomoy, it's like
Yeah.
historic,
then
yeah,
forget what I said specifically.
but the
Yeah,
association
so,
of
yeah,
the Civic League.
yeah.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that is absolutely correct. So West Monomoy was actually laid out in 1727, which it does get a little confusing. So we've made sure that we're saying also New Guinea, New Guinea is found in the William Coffin map of 1834. That was the area, as well as Five Corners, because that's where a lot of us know contemporarily of where this location is. But yes, identifying these neighborhoods are very important. And I think for those other areas, once we get to those, we'll definitely reach out to the Civic League. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks for the education, Jerry.
Definitely. Yeah, Holly, I just had a question about the difficulty getting a response to the request for proposal. Grant Point 2023. What is and I'm noticing we're kind of turning away from the MHC program. Are they just not offering enough money, or what do you think is going on?
So the program through the state is very prescriptive within their RFQ process. I will tell you that MHC has allowed us to tweak the scope so it's more Nantucket centric. For instance, we know we have subject matter experts here on Nantucket that have been researching history for a long time that may not have the prerequisites of other communities within Massachusetts. That's kind of where we had respondents, but they didn't meet those qualifications. So MHC allowed us to tweak that part, as well as we all know, there's a Nantucket factor, and the monetary, amount that they receive per form isn't a lot when you're tackling people traveling to Nantucket, staying on Nantucket. So they did allow us to reduce it from the 140 survey forms down to 120. So hopefully we receive a responsive vendor for that one. And I will say CPC, that's been around since town meeting of 2021. We were one of the first communities within the Commonwealth to adopt it by an active town meeting. I was a proponent of it when I was in high school. And, the fact that it's local money going towards preservation, as well as we're able to work with our public and private and educational sectors. So it is an easier process to go through than it is with MHC. I will also notate this, I mentioned this to the Historical Commission, that the historic, basically the federal funding that comes through Congress has had some cuts to it. It took a long time for this last fiscal year's budget to come down through Congress to each state historic preservation office after it was allocated from Congress. And there's been a lot of push from Preservation Action, the country's nonprofit for preservation lobbying at Congress, because there have been rumors and said that funding source from the federal government will be slashed. So of course, having it from a local side is going to be more of an easier get, if you will, for us to move forward.
Yeah,
Thank you. Holly Showtime. Being on the CPC, was kind of tough last winter, watching people fight against some of these programs you were trying to get forward. So I got to give you a lot of credit. You stood there and fought for these. I think they're really important. I also want to say that the website, the GIS mapping and everything that's coming along, correct me if I'm wrong, but the last 3 to 4 years, it's really advanced quickly. You're getting a lot of information on there, which is really helpful. So people around the island, some are finding it. I think that's a really, really important device to have. Getting town trees on there and all this information, whatever we can get on there, I think is really important. The one thing I want to put on your next agenda for Y27 is being on the Nantucket area plan. They want to do building with Nantucket in mind, which I think we've talked about. But I want to say it publicly, I would love to have your input, get that going. Last meeting, Megan, you were there, they were talking about it. It's something that they're really important. They really want to protect that as much as possible. Create a guideline, set up a book that is specific to them. So I'd love your input, and anyone else you can recommend to join that team would be great. So thank you. Keep doing what you're doing.
yeah, that's a great point. I know, every year, Holly and a couple members of the NHC present to the National Association of Realtors, and so we talked about building with Sconset in mind, so I'm sure Nantucket wants something very similar, because what they ended up doing, was it the last one, Holly? They gave everybody a copy and like really just made sure people had awareness, so I think it'd be great to also do that.
Yeah, and they've read
Yeah,
that.
there it is.
Right. So I think that would be really important, and they've been we almost talk about it at every meeting. They really are want to get started sooner than later, but once we get through the master plan information, then that's going to be their next agenda. So, but it's now how to pay for it. That's the problem.
Through you,
So-
Madam Chair, to Joe, yes, absolutely. I think that's very important. Nantucket is a different vernacular from the typical building with Nantucket in mind guidance. So I agree with you 100%, and I would look forward to helping you all do that.
Great. Any other questions? Hillary?
Yeah, I just had a comment about the Main Street streetscapes. I'm really thrilled that NPT, PIN is continuing looking at the design. But I know, well, I'll phrase it as a question. The overlap between that effort and this commission, of course, is the traversability of the sidewalk along Main Street, which is it's like beyond impossible. Everybody knows, and it's been that way for a really long time, only getting worse. And we have the homestead up that street where people have some difficulty walking. So is there anything that we could, I guess I just want to highlight and ask for your comments on the project, and if there's anything we could keep in mind to move that from design standards to more feasibility for making that sidewalk traversable and still historic.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Yes, so through this last fiscal year, one of the things that I was actually kind of bounced between CPC and Capcom on was the fact that there is a need to do just that. And we're working on having a design, a planometric kind of model where we'd have to get some LiDAR scanning done of specific areas on Main Street, for instance, where traversing the historic streetscape is very difficult, but as all those different elements that are in jeopardy, for instance, the historic trees, the historic material itself. So that is actually in the works. It is a priority from town administration to move forward with that. So there's more to come. The aspect or the section that the CPC is funded for PIN has been more of the historic research component of it. So it will tie in with this other project. So we're working.
Thank you so much.
Liza.
Just to follow up, Holly, we're looking forward to having you at our continuing education session at the end of October. And I think that this the feature on the GIS will be very valuable.
Yes, so that was the thing I mentioned that Holly and there could be a couple of commission members who are gonna come and give a really good presentation. And it's really helpful because educating a lot of the real estate community on, what they can do, what they can't. They're gonna talk about like preservation restrictions, all sorts of different things. So I think it's just great to kind of get more information out there to the public. So if
Yeah.
tell everybody to come.
Yes, I'm on the committee.
Perfect, great.
So.
And Holly, thank you. We'll look forward to hearing well, I think our meeting is before that, but thank you for that. Any other questions? All right, thank you so much, Holly. We really appreciate it.
I just want to make a little tiny announcement. Back to what Hillary asked about the sidewalks. I just forwarded this to Holly, but I sent it to the director of the DPW and to Megan and to some other people today. Because the planning commission as an RPA is on the Rural Policy Advisory Council. I was on an email thread today with Ann Goby, who's the director of Rural Affairs, I think is her title. And there's some grant money that was recently approved by the legislature for revitalizing downtowns and making them more economically viable. And you can do planning type stuff, you can do infrastructure improvements. So, and that's something that we'll be going to a listening session about to see, if that's something that we could be.
Great. The more money, the better.
Can you send that to me, please?
Awesome. Sorry, Nat.
No, but
All right, well, thank you
That'd be
so much,
fine.
Holly. We really appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Charlie.
Next up on the agenda, Mike, we're here for your program update on transportation.
And thank you, Madam Chair. I hope you can hear me all right. I'm gonna run through a couple of slides here related to the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. You might remember this going all the way back to the April, May, June meetings where we kind of talked about restructuring and you all had approved expanding the scope and taking a look at the membership of BPAC to expand it to include all other transportation modes. I did include in the meeting materials some of the memorandums of agreement between the regions in Martha's Vineyard and Cape Cod and what they had executed with Mass DOT. They have similar advisory committees or citizen advisory committees that they use to inform their policy boards, which is essentially what you all are. The NPAGC is the policy board. The Martha's Vineyard Commission, their advisory committee is known as a Joint Transportation Committee. It's the same name that's used in the Cape Cod Commission as well. But on the Vineyard, their membership is structured with a representative from each of the 6 towns, as well as 1 county representative. And they do essentially what we want to do with this advisory committee, and that's to serve as a forum to discuss transportation issues and to help guide decision-making done at the regional level. I'll also note that there are some non-voting representatives on that committee as well that represent the bike community, other transportation advisors and members of the public. The Cape Cod Commission has a member from each of the 15 towns on the Cape. Those representatives aren't necessarily select board members. They're actually technical staff. A lot of them are either the DPW directors or assistant directors of DPWs, and they also include a bicycle rep from Cape Cod, and they do essentially the same function as the Martha's Vineyard Commission, and that's advise the policy board, the Cape Cod MVO, on 3C matters. So knowing that we wanted to do something similar to the other regions and other regions throughout the country and locally, we did share our intentions with town administration at the local level. The Roads and Right-of-Way Committee did discuss this possibility of broadening their mission to include 3C program items that we approve at the regional level. Their recommendation, and I believe Nat Lowell can probably expand on this discussion as well since he was at that meeting. But the Roads and Right-of-Way recommendation was to form a committee known as a Public Access and Transportation Planning Advisory Committee, or PACPAC. And they would keep a lot of their public access mission intact, which is the middle paragraph there, with a note that they would also provide advice to town planners for accommodating vehicular and mobile device traffic, such as bicycles, scooters, skateboards, etc. And the structure that they had recommended was non-voting ex officio members that would be a NPNEDC liaison, myself, the transportation program manager, the DPW director, and the real estate specialist. They would be non-voting members to a 9-member advisory committee. I did provide a staff recommendation, and this is very similar to what I had presented at the meetings earlier this summer. I've modified the recommended name of the committee from a Transportation Planning Advisory Committee to be a Transportation Planning and Public Access Advisory Committee, or traffic. So we'll play on words, sounds a heck of a lot like traffic. So I thought that was a more appropriate name and more fun, and it made a little more sense to what the purpose of that committee would be. So traffic would have a mission of advising the select board, county commission, and you all, the NPDC, on what I presented earlier: all roadway, all transportation assets, roadway intersection, freight, public parking, bike and pedestrian, all those priorities that would be included in the town strategic plan, the town master plan, the long range transportation plan, the transportation improvement program, and the UPWP, the planning board program. Status of and improvements to access over public ways would also be included in the mission. That's to align with the Roads and Right-of-Way Commission's recommendation. So that bullet point there is intended to succinctly state what that mission would be related to public access, as well as provide recommendations for regulations of streets, paths, and sidewalks, specifically not including recommendations for public parking. That would be handled with a separate parking group to be determined. And then also serve as a forum for public outreach opportunities. That's reviewing survey responses, serving as a sounding board for other comments or recommendations we get from the public. And the structure of this group would be essentially at the ex officio level, have it be staff, myself, the program manager, transportation program manager, the DPW director, and the real estate specialist. There would then be 7 at-large members appointed by the local community. Right now, we're envisioning the select board making those appointments as part of their annual appointments to various advisory boards. But different from the Roads and Right-of-Way Committee recommendation, staff is recommending that 2 NPDC representatives be appointed by you all to serve as voting members to this 9-member advisory committee. Again, 9 appointments made by the select board, and then 2 appointments made by you all to have representation of that committee. So, Madam Chair, again, because the Bike and Pedestrian Committee appointments expired at the end of June, and since we do have recommendations from Roads and Right-of-Way and the staff recommendation, staff is asking that you all provide a recommendation to the select board for a name, mission, and structure for this Citizens Advisory Committee that would have purpose to make recommendations at the regional and local level for transportation planning issues. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Okay, Brooke.
I'm not sure how the Roads and Right-of-Ways recommendation came through, but if I remember, and I think it got lost in translation, I was part of that meeting, and I think I was saying that one of the 9 at-large members would be appointed by the NPDC, but would not be required to be a member of the NPDC. But before I comment further on staff recommendation, I'd love to hear from the rest of the commission.
Yeah, this is a little bit, obviously, my regular right-of-way 3 week wasn't this deep because it hadn't got that far yet. Mike, can you hear me? Sorry. Mike,
Yes, I can hear you.
sorry. Okay, Mike, so can I just ask, this might be a dumb question, but is this the new 9 people to replace current BPAC? I know it's expired, but just being, so it's clear, BPAC and right-of-way committee would sort of dissolve into this 9-member committee, right? Correct?
Exactly. This is essentially merging the two, and
Okay.
one, cut down on the number of committees, but also expand the scope of the roads and right of way and to still address bike and pedestrian issues, but serve as one committee. This should be a little bit more of an efficient structure.
Yeah. Now, I don't need to belabor this. I just have a few more questions, Mike. So back in the day of traffic safety, when I used to participate in those meetings, I wasn't a member. And Art would have his official looking program with different areas all marked out, very professional. Is that how this is gonna be, where somebody has the agenda items are all on the screen and it shows what the problem is or what the solution is, or et cetera, looking for advice, et cetera. And also having live visits or instructed to go look at things, that kind of stuff. I mean, that's how I see it evolving. Because a lot of this stuff, you have to look at it with somebody else. You can't just look at doesn't always work to look at a drawing, that makes any sense. I mean, I'm assuming that this is gonna be like traffic safety replacement. I know you guys have a staff version of that. But I'm talking about, let's just pretend we still have traffic safety now in the current form it used to be. I could see this morphing into this group as well. Of sort of the stuff that we used to look at wasn't always about safety. It was about parking. It was about curb cut stuff, things that get really squirrely at meetings that you have to go look at.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think the intent of this is to still keep a lot of the traditional traffic safety issues at the traffic safety level with staff. If it's individual parking spaces that someone's requested to be removed, that's all kept, again, it's still at that traffic safety level with staff appointed to that committee. What this group would be, the Citizen Advisory Committee, would be other issues and recommendations on priorities that need to be advanced related to roadways, intersections, public transportation, sidewalks, bike paths, to serve as a sounding board for those. I don't think it's going to get down to the granular level that you're talking about, or like individual parking spaces, and should this be a 20-minute, a 15, something like this. It's not intended to be that granular. It's meant to be more of a broader scope to, again, and help inform what the priority should be, and to make recommendations on, if we do like an alternatives analysis, see if there's a preference for an option 1, 2, or 3, say, and have that detailed to get into the weeds, just like BPAC did, get into the weeds on those various details of those options, and then make a recommendation to the policy boards, the select board, and then the APDC.
Okay.
Brooke and then Joe.
I'll just reiterate what Mike said. That is definitely where town administration is leaning in this recommendation.
Okay, Joe.
Okay, who to ask a question for? Mike, it sounds like you guys had a conversation about this right away, but it doesn't, in my conversation with Ian Goulding today, Chair BPAC, that he really knows really nothing about this. And like, no one's brought him in to kind of have a group meeting with everyone, kind of just see how this is gonna merge and what's gonna happen. It sounds like it should merge, because you asked me during the meeting, what do you think of this? And I said, yeah, I think we should expand it. I wasn't quite aware that it was gonna get to this level, or this matching with 2 different organizations, if you will. So I'm just kind of curious, like, can we bring it to BPAC and kind of talk about this, like have a little delay to see how it's gonna be structured, talk about it, have some review of it? Cause it, I mean, is the ink done on this? It's kind of, right now I'm seeing like, kind of shocked that I'm hearing about this now, you know?
Yeah. Well, Madam Chair, you did authorize earlier this summer to expand the scope of BPAC. So those appointments all expired, so that we wouldn't be reconvening BPAC. Those appointments have expired and they're gone.
Right.
So the expanded scope is still there, and we're trying to realize that it's just that if this would be a committee that would be housed within town administration and appointed by the select board with what staff is recommending, having 2 appointments from NPDC, rather than it being an advisory committee directly to the NPDC. So the intent is still to cover bike and pedestrian issues and to be advisory to the local and the regional boards. It's just, it's going to be at the local level rather than at the regional commission level.
One thing, from a practical standpoint though, Joe, what we could do is if we aren't comfortable, we don't need to take action today if we wanted to bring
Yeah, I
the
think-
people in, and then we can just put it on a future agenda if we feel like
Yeah,
it's not ready for us. Because I mean, you did show a recommendation from like one group, but if we should maybe have both groups give their recommendation before we make a formal recommendation, I would recommend that we put this on a future agenda so that
Yeah,
way,
that's all I was asking for.
we can at least get their feedback. I think if everyone agrees with that, we don't need to take action today.
Yeah,
Hillary?
yeah, thank you. I totally support the, bringing BPAC in, because I too reached out to the chair of BPAC and learned that he didn't know anything about this. I also want to say, yes, this commission, said that they were, that they wanted to expand BPAC, but I don't think anybody ever said that we didn't want to have the expanded commission be advisory to the NPDC. So the NPDC is the transportation planning organization for Nantucket, and together with the is the Mass DOT on our call today? They are. So together with the Mass DOT, they're the committee of signatories. And if we want to have a joint transportation advisory group or, committee, the way the Vineyard does or the Cape Cod Commission does, I think that would be terrific. But I would include people like the Commission on Disabilities. I would do what the Cape Cod Commission and the Martha's Vineyard Commission have done with their groups, where they have the DPW, they have the commission, we could have the Commission on Disability, we could have someone from the bicycle community. I don't necessarily support dissolving BPAC because I think they do important work specific to bicycle and pedestrian activities. And maybe that should continue and report to the select board. But as far as, continuing in our really important role as an MPO in the Commonwealth, one of the objectives of that is to make sure that we have the 3C process, which is participatory, it's a public process, it's responsive. I mean, I'm saying stuff that you all know, but it seems like I watched the Roads and Rights of Way Committee meeting from the 16th where this was discussed, and I didn't hear the discussion of what I think we need, which is more of a public facing, broader, inclusive advisory commission to us as the MPO. So I think this needs a little bit more time to bake.
All right, well, I think it seems like, Mike, everyone's kind of in agreement that let's bring this back to a future agenda. I think for you as staff, we'd like you to at least reach out to the former members of BPAC. We know that it expired, but at least so.
Yeah, we all thought we were just gonna get it.
Yeah, I
Staggered out,
agree.
and that's what that was our
Talk
understanding.
about the staggered appointment thing.
Yeah, that's what we thought, like, oh, we're just gonna get staggered and keep going, so that was the whole thing, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, you guys are gonna be, cut in half or whatever and with
Yeah.
rights away.
And I think that before we would make any recommendation, I think we want at the very least to have their perspective on what they would
Yeah, I think the
recommend.
chair and vice chair of BPAC should have been part of this.
Yeah,
first.
so, Mike, we would recommend you reach out to the chair and the
Vice chair.
vice chair of BPAC and see if you can get a recommendation from them. And then we can bring this back at a future meeting.
Madam Chair?
Will do.
I just want to add on one other suggestion, which is that we think about what it is we're really trying to achieve. You know, we're trying to achieve more than just have two committees that are standing refresh their mission. I think, you know, we're really trying to support the 3C process. And I guess I'd like to just hear a little bit more from Mike about what support he's looking for. So that we can think about the composition in a really thoughtful way.
And honestly, I mean, when we have meetings, it's an hour, we're talking about, like, you know, and the letter about having problems in Boston and speed limits and it's problematic, so that's why I'm just, we're just starting to get the hands-on e-bikes, and now we're all of a sudden getting may get second fiddle to something else, and I just don't want to get that lost.
No, I think
So
that's.
I think this is an important conversation. I mean, I've been on right away for 22 years. And I'm no longer the youngest person. We'll show you.
Surprise.
So, I saw this coming a while ago, and I brought this up. About, we gotta do something about the right of way to do. Like, this is not the same, like, there's not a lot of work. We have Tracy. You know, we have a lot of the stuff that Andrew did, all the things that we've done over the years, access. The posts, you know,
Yeah.
all that. There's still some of that, the flat ones out in Wisconsin on Baxter Road. But there's less. It's not enough, you know, people mad about the Bluff Path, for example. That's a town issue. Like, that's a big issue. That is like, you can't believe how mad the people are out there. I used to cut the thing for Earl Coffin, Joe. I mean, it's unbelievable. So, can't make this stuff up. But anyway, I hope I don't get in trouble later, but I do think BPAC needs to kind of stay in what it's doing. And it's the reason why, it's not just because of this e-bike nightmare. Those little cars, the little
Yeah.
What is it? What are the LV? No, LS, excuse me. Another thing to remember. That's a big deal, like on the Nantucket, how that all kind of came down from the state, then all of a sudden we can't drive on Sconset Road. Like, what are you talking about, right? This e-bike thing's not going away, it's only just started. It's just started. Like, it's unbelievable, Joe, okay? I think that BPAC, whether it changes to how it's made up, whether it gets appointed by the select board, maybe one member from here, whatever. But I think that, I don't think that this new revisions, right-of-way committee, traffic safety, whatever we're gonna call the new name, I don't think it can take in the stuff that you're doing.
And I
think
could
that's
see if
too
there were like
much.
joint meetings. Well,
Yeah.
you know, we have
Yeah.
meetings and then all of a sudden let's come together. And
This is.
which we're doing in planning board and BDC and select board, like,
Yeah.
that's really smart of the town to be doing.
I
this.
think, so, because what's gonna happen with the bike stuff, is gonna get more louder, more people talking about it. What's the town doing? What are we gonna do about the schools? What are we gonna do about all of it, right? There's a lot
And pushing the
involved.
state to get regulations.
And again, if the state gets regulations, Joe, it might not work here, just like those LS.
That's why Mike and I have talked about going to the state and
It's just,
fight for
come up
ourselves.
with something that makes no sense on the entire. So, if we knew these were coming, the bike paths would all be 12 feet wide. Nobody knew, with a line in the middle, right? But anyway, so I think that we should postpone a little bit,
Mhm.
Madam Chair, and we do need to keep the bike committee a
Yeah.
little bit. Somehow.
Yeah.
Revise it a little bit, but But I think it needs to stay in somewhat of the same form it's in now in a new appointing situation, a new terms, all that stuff, which we talked about here.
Can they even meet? I mean,
No.
all of the terms expire.
Well, I think that can be done through, I mean, I don't think that's a big issue. Yeah, I don't think it's, this is Nantucket, we can still do something. I hope.
I just have
Got it.
one comment. Well, since we're gonna be tabling this and I support that, but going forward, maybe we can get two birds with one stone, and the people that are currently on those committees who want to continue should put their, however we handle it, letters of interest or send an email to Leslie and just
Instructive.
get the
Yeah.
structure, like forget those people going rather than make it two meetings to figure out who it's gonna.
Absolutely. I mean, I am all in favor of honing this stuff in and resetting. Definitely the committee I've been on, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that dissolving BPAC and trying to put it into this might be a little too much. I don't know. I just see that as another whole special sort of thing. I mean, I can talk about e-bikes all day, but I don't know what you know. I don't, because I haven't paid attention to it.
Can I just reply?
Yeah.
I do when they do wheelies going down South Shore Road though. All the way down the road.
So I kind of thought, because of William Street, we got
Yeah.
a lot of information out of that, as much as everyone was complaining, we get that, knew that. But at the same time, a lot of information came out of that, and also we were working with the historic preservation, and then we had, HCC wing, and everyone was kind of weighing in and giving advice and showing up at meetings, which is fantastic. And the other part of it was, we also did DPW because infringement of plants, and so when that scope came up, we definitely went a little bit farther than we probably should have. But that was when I kind of heard the expansion of like, we should do this, and I think that's great. And then we could go to, rights away and say, hey, we talked about this, what are you guys missing anything? So that's where I feel it's two gears working together and
I like that.
independently.
I think that's right. I think you're right on pretty close to what it needs to be.
Okay.
Thank you.
Leslie, what do you suggest here? I mean, I don't know where we are with all this stuff, but I do know that there's been a lot going on in the town trying to figure this out.
We've taken a
I just
little
don't want to go beyond what we should be, but at the same time, I do agree that BPAC's not out of work. Okay? So you don't have like.
Madam Chair,
At the same time, Andrew.
All right, we're gonna,
Mike's laughing. Go
yeah.
ahead.
And
no, I'm
then-
trying to get in, but the chair asked me something, when you said there's something about postponing it, and there was some good productive conversation after that. I just wanted to clarify a point, that, Joe Topham had mentioned that, this was actually shared with VPAC before at their last meeting. So this was all discussed with them. They understood that we're trying to expand the scope. And we did ask the chair and the vice chair, and both are very interested in submitting letters of interest to this new committee. So I don't want you to leave the meeting thinking that there was nothing shared. This was very transparent and shared with the Ingolding and RJ Turcott, and they still wanted to apply for those. So I just want to be very clear that if we bring those two individuals into the next meeting, it would be as potential applicants to this committee. And like I said, we're not getting rid of the bicycle and pedestrian advice role. It's just being expanded to other things. So I think we all saw the value of the BPAC. We just needed to have that same excitement and rigor used for these other transportation assets that, like congestion, like public transportation, and some other priorities for transportation planning that I do need to be updating in the next couple of years. I needed an advisory committee to help inform that with a broader scope of what BPAC was. So I hope that clarifies the point, and you all appreciate that we did actually share this with other people and they weren't left out of the decision making at all. But I can definitely circle back with those individuals to clarify this point with them and see if they support that or not. But they would be potential applicants for this other advisory committee.
Yeah, and they all voted to remain on BPAC and expand our scope. But at the same time, I don't think anyone knew right away we were gonna be part of that. That's where I think that there was a little misinformation. And in my conversation with Ian, he's like, that's not what I remember. And he was gonna go in his notes and double check that. So it's just, if we can reset and start again and kind of like, have everyone at the table, that would be great.
And I just insert, so I think part of the merger with roads and rights of way came out of discussions with the town manager.
Right.
About, sort of her view and the select board's view of where that committee's going.
Yeah.
And the discussion was that, roads and rights of way has a really, valuable role. BPAC has a really valuable role, but maybe it could be a more robust committee if they were combined to have a broader scope for each and have a broader view of all of the pieces.
Which is fine, but I think it was brought to one board, not a.
So we'll have them,
completely.
we'll set up,
So-
we'll put it as an agenda item for
Yeah.
next.
Because you and I had a
Yeah,
conversation.
I asked you about that.
What are you talking about?
What are you talking about? I know, I'm like, I don't know, that's what I'm being told.
Fanatism?
I don't know, and you don't know, that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, Leslie, I think, I'm not saying that there's no way to make this work in this format or framework. See, I'm using a new fancy word, framework, but we have to talk more about it, I think. As far as the bike committee stuff goes, it is a different situation. I'm not saying it's gonna go on for 20 years like this, but they deserve that because they're new and they've done a lot. You know what I mean? Like they have advanced a lot of things that nobody else was doing. And I think that they deserve that discussion somehow. So,
I just had a funny thought actually that I'll share while I was sitting here. I bet in the 1980s, we all thought we'd be sitting here talking about Jetsons flying cars,
Oh.
not e-bikes.
nobody heard of, never thought of a fast boat 2 years before they came, just so you know.
Right. Mike, moving on to the next item.
Sure. The next item concerns e-bikes, actually. There is a bill at the state legislature to establish a definition of class 3 e-bikes within Mass General Law to include that class 3 e-bike as within the definition of electric bikes at the state level. And there's some other minor changes regarding e-bike use on some sidewalks. But I don't think that's as significant as putting in the definitions in Mass General Law. And I believe what this will now allow municipalities to do is establish their own regulations for class 3s now that there is a definition at the state, or would be a definition at the state level. So if you like the general scope of this bill, perhaps staff would ask for you to authorize drafting of the letter of support for this legislation.
Anybody wanna write a motion? The support defining.
Joe, what is
Yeah,
this?
I need this explained to me by Joe.
Yeah, worked on a lot.
By any
of
Chinese
trucks, but not
Joe.
even-
Thank you. I was like, anyone else want to speak? Because you know how I'm gonna say, yes, move this along.
This is good, okay.
No, I think this is a really good thing. This is really important. And I think if you read the article and I sent out one this morning from Axios, it's the same thing. They're having major problems with the e-bikes. So anyway, we can kind of define them and help prohibit them in certain areas. I think that's really important. And I know on Nantucket, we don't allow e-bikes on the trails, but they allow them. They've let some people that they've seen that need the assistance that still want to go on the trails, but they haven't really enforced it. So, but I think this is important because you can come around a corner and someone's doing 28 miles an hour on the e-bike and you're doing 15 on the trail, you're gonna get crushed.
So this removes a prohibition on the use of e-bikes on trails. However, it makes it possible to locally decide if you want it on the trail.
That's right.
And your point is already locally, like,
It's in place.
yeah, so,
All the conservation people have it, but the other thing is my wife owns the store on Center Street, and she said there will people be flying down the sidewalks on scooters or whatever, so.
Yeah.
People coming out of the store, there was one time this woman was almost hit. So I think anything we can do, I know it's a rule and it's in place, but it should be definitely enforced.
So you need,
I'm a little confused. Mike, maybe you can help me. I'm reading this, that it defines a class 3 electric bicycle as one that only provides assistance when pedaling, does that mean that all of the ones that we think of as class 3 e-bikes that are basically like electric dirt bikes that these kids are riding would not be defined as electric bicycles? This seems,
If you're referring to the electric mopeds, what this definition provides is to be an electric bicycle, you have to have pedals and a chain.
Yeah.
It has to actually be a bicycle. And you
Okay.
do see some electric mopeds out. So those would be treated as mopeds. So it wouldn't meet the definition of an electric bicycle if it did not have pedals.
okay, so no, that's not what I mean. I'm saying the ones, the e-bikes that we see that are basically throttle driven, right? Regardless, they have
Right.
pedals, but you don't have to
Correct.
pedal them to make them go, right? Am I reading this
Right, 'cause
wrong?
that-
Am I a little dense here? Because it feels like this is not even referring to those. It is closing the definition of e-bikes to those that you pedal. What do we do about the ones where they're throttle driven? Is the state not addressing that?
The pedal, the throttle should not work after 20 miles an hour. Whether that's been manipulated or not, I'm not sure. But the way this is reading is that the throttle would stop working at 20 miles an hour. The pedal assist would stop working at 28 miles an hour. If you're very good at biking, you can pedal manually faster than that, then that's fine. But that the pedal assist portion of it would, the difference between a class 2 and a 3 is a class 2, the pedal assist stops at 20 miles an hour, and that's deemed to be appropriate for bike paths. But the class 3 doesn't stop until it's 28 miles an hour, which we all agree is far too fast and dangerous. So I'm trying to answer your question. I think what you're asking is the throttle itself has to have a speed beyond 20 miles an hour, and I don't think the manufacturers allow that to happen. I think those are regulated at 20 miles an hour at tops for the throttle, but the pedal assist is a different animal.
Okay.
And once you change that, you just change the classification.
Mhm.
Once you remove that safety device at 20 miles an hour, you've just gone up a class, correct?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's my
That
understanding.
would be a moped,
Right.
yeah.
You change the definition of, or the class of that e-bike.
So Joe, just so I'm clear, so on our bike paths then, this would allow pedal assist at 28 miles an hour on a bike path.
Well, it's really tough to pedal at 20 miles an hour. If you're going downhill or you're on a road bike. So most people on a regular bike are doing 15 to 20 miles an hour. So that's why I brought up last year the speed limit of 20 miles an hour, which is still fast, but at the same time, it allows you to get across. But so there's certain areas where you're going downhill. I've done this on my mountain bike or fat bike that I've gone down and I've done 28, 30 miles an hour. So it depends on what the hill is. So I think that what they're saying is if you're pedaling downhill, you have your e-bike and you pedal, you can go up to 20 miles an hour. That's my understanding.
Driveway and a curb cut halfway down the hill, something's coming down.
SOL.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the reality is, even if you were on a non-electric bike.
You could still do the same thing.
Yeah,
That's why I think it's kind of my next thing is that every driveway on a bike path should have a rump strip or something, cobblestone, Belgian block, something just as they're coming out. Oh, so as you're holding your open coffee, it kind of bubbles and you slow down and signals. But then it makes you also remind you to look left and right. So.
Okay, thank you.
all right. So. What's the motion?
Yeah, motion to approve.
Yeah.
So we're sending a letter of support or.
Yes, so your motion is to. Send a letter of support for Bill H 3728 and act relative to class 3 electric.
3758.
Madam Chair, just to be clear, I would ask the motion be that authorized staff to draft a letter for the chair to sign.
Okay. So Joe, is that your motion?
Second.
Second, okay, Christina? Aye. Nat,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Hillary,
Aye.
Liza. Aye. Bert,
Aye.
Brooke,
I'm going to abstain because I'm still confused.
okay. And I as the chair, with aye. All right. The next thing on the agenda is the Nantucket Area Plan Work Group. I think Megan, you have a quick update on this.
Yes, so as I mentioned, at your last meeting earlier this summer, I had a chance to meet with the chair of the Nantucket Area Plan Work Group, and I did attend their last monthly meeting to discuss expanding the boundary. I've worked with our GIS coordinator to create a map. There still needs to be some subtle tweaks, so let me share the screen, but you will get the gist of their existing boundary, and where it's being proposed to expand to. So the hatch section here, that's the existing boundary. The red line delineates where it would expand, so we have, this snip to include that there, so those little differences, but currently it does not include Warren's Landing, it doesn't include Massasoit Bridge area, it doesn't extend to Clark Cove. There's a lot of conservation areas surrounding the Nantucket area ponds that aren't included, and the group thought it was important, to include these areas, and I tend to agree with them. So in order to advance that, because the work group is a subgroup of the NP and EDC, you all will have to authorize that boundary expansion so that they can continue with their work. It's my understanding that they've done survey work that does include these areas in the proposed boundary, so those will be covered in the plan if you choose to approve this. So that is the request, and the recommendation to approve the expansion of the boundary.
We talked, last time we talked about this is a while ago. I remember.
And Bruce Mendel reached
Yeah.
out to everyone, so everyone is on board for this. And this,
And you left out Fisher's Landing for a reason, right?
I think at the time back in, was it 04 or 05 or 06?
Oh, yeah, maybe a two, so.
I think that group was under the impression that somehow the recommendations would compel them to do certain things, which isn't the case. This is an advisory document. It's meant to focus on the entire area, not to segment out sub neighborhoods within the area. So it's important that these areas are included. And if there were future zoning changes approved out of the recommendations here, we tackle that at that time.
yeah, I think it was just a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
So.
I agree with the stop at the funky Eel Point Road loop as well. I don't think we need to be experiencing that. So.
I think this makes a lot of sense. I just have a question about their delivery of their area plan, which has been going on for a long time. And I mean, that includes like whole new subdivisions and do the people of Fisher's Landing, are they already involved with the work, or would we need to like add more people to the planning group so that the people who live in Fisher's Landing would know an area plan is being formed?
They did a poll, so they're part of that poll, and that was brought in as well.
Oh,
And after that, I
Oh,
think the Nantucket group is one of the most active associations. They have a really, really high participation rate, and really any initiatives that they have out there, it's quite impressive. And I'm sure they would do a great job getting the draft plan circulated.
Bruce, we'll let you speak.
Oh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To address this last question, we have been in touch with the Fisher's Landing Homeowners Association. They're quite on board with the work we're doing. Of course, as a homeowners association, they have their own set of rules. And as was just mentioned, the area plan is a guidance document. It's not a demand. It doesn't create any kind of obligations, but includes them as being part of the community. And we've got 13 separate neighborhoods in the Nantucket area, and they're one of them. So we've spoken to them. The head of that group is very happy to participate and has been a little active. So we appreciate that. And I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Bruce. Any other questions?
I'm just looking at eel, like, just thank you, Bruce. I'm really glad to hear that there's been a lot of discussion, and I'm sure they're happy to be in an area. I would think they'd be happy to be in the area, and that it makes sense that Nantucket would include that area. The Clark's Cove also makes sense. I do have some, why the North Shore? I mean, I don't really think of the North Shore as being part of Nantucket.
Always thought it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
As a kid.
Yeah, especially if you go.
I'd like to, can I just say
Bruce,
something,
you can
please?
also, yes,
Yeah.
please address, thank you.
Okay. There are all kinds of different documents and plans that refer to Nantucket. There's no clear definition of it. The closest inclusive document is what the Board of Health uses, and it's the Nantucket Watershed Protection District. And that includes a good portion of that North Shore. And that's just science-based rather than recreational based. There are several beaches up there that we're very eager to keep the access to. We've surveyed that area. We've had seven or eight surveys going back to 1995, 1997, 98, 04, 2019, 2 and 2023. We've surveyed those properties. They're quite eager to have some kind of guiding document that can be used in terms of holding development to a practical, low-key, low-height area, something that the HDC can use when reviewing applications, that the Zoning Board of Appeals can use, that addresses not only their 5 or 6 parameters of what they approve as a pool, but Nantucket has its own set of issues that we ask the ZBA to include in their approvals, and they do. So that area has been surveyed, and there's no resistance and there's no problem so far with them being part of the neighborhoods. And as I said, it's just a guiding document. It doesn't force them to do anything. It just
Thank
makes the definitions easier. We have the Nantucket Harbor and Long Pond Estuary. There's the Nantucket Harbor Action Plan, the Nantucket Culverts Evaluation, the Nantucket Watersheds. There are 7 sub-watersheds in Nantucket. All of these things have different definitions of what Nantucket is, and one of our objectives is to provide a clear definition of what Nantucket is, and this amended boundary was recommended to us to do by Andrew Vorse. We had several meetings with Andrew and the work group, which has changed dramatically in its composition, but he pointed out 2 key issues. And he said, planning department's not going to do it for us. We're going to have to do it ourselves and back it up with surveys, which we've done. And the 2 issues are an amended boundary and zoning. We have too many zoning districts in Nantucket, and he suggested we try to consolidate them to make them more uniform so there's guidance to the approving entities in the town. So we've been diligently trying to work on that. And, we've got 13 separate neighborhoods, and the Eel Point area, the North Shore area is one of them.
Great, thank you, Bruce. Anyone else?
I'd make a motion to support the new map, old new boundary.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Mike, seconded by Hillary to adopt the updated boundary as presented here on the screen and in our packet. Christina,
I,
Nat,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Hillary,
I,
Liza,
Aye.
Bert,
Aye.
Brooke.
Aye.
And as the chair, I also vote aye. Thank you, Bruce, and onward and upward with this.
Thank you, people. Appreciate it.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the annual report. There, a copy of that was in the packet. A draft of it. It's due, when is it? Friday,
Yeah.
so,
So it's the town report.
yeah, it's a town.
Yeah, so the annual town report for the commission is in your packet. It's just a summary of the actions that you all took throughout the year, things that you focused on. It's really just a formality for you all to vote on it. Your bylaws specifically say that you may review a report, you may include one in the booklet that goes out at town meeting. So, you'll have any comments on it? Let me know, but it's,
I have one question. Thank you for putting together the report, and I'm really glad we're putting a report in the town, annual report. So the NPDC continued to support the ongoing progress of the master plan update being led by the planning board. And it also says that some of the DLTA funds were spent on the master plan. I am struggling to remember when this commission even ever talked about the master plan update. I mean, obviously, we all individually support the master plan update. I'm not saying we don't support it, but it hasn't really. I think the annual report should focus on the things that we actually have talked about and done. So if you're saying that, our staff is I mean, you're supporting it and you are our staff. So, but I just found that a little confusing and potentially even a little misleading. And I wanted a little bit of an explanation.
okay, I mean, we could reword that if you all think it's misleading, but I mean, the commission is supporting it by having your staff do the work and by providing funding. So if you want it to be a little bit more specific, I'm happy to change that.
I guess I want to hear from other people, but just to be clear, the complication for me is that if we're supporting it, we should be talking about it. And we should definitely be making sure that it's getting done. But if we're not having anything to do with it, and it's really going through the planning board, then they're responsible for making sure it gets done.
Okay. I see it as I take your point, but I see it as in just a summary that we do support it as the NPDC, so it just says continue to support the ongoing progress of the master plan update. I don't see it as I don't see the wording as incorrect. That's just my one comment.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing is but I mean, I don't necessarily think we need to get the detail like you're saying, we're supporting it because we're financially supporting it. I think, I mean, if you want to, but I guess it says that the master plan update is being led by the planning board, so I don't think it's misleading to say we're supporting what's being led by the planning board. I don't think anybody reading this would then think that we are leading it if it says it's being led by the planning board, but I also don't feel super strongly about it, but I don't think that statement is misleading because it's pretty clear that the planning board is the entity leading the master plan, not us. But I mean, I guess if you just want to specify that we provide financial support, something like that, but I agree with Mike in that I don't necessarily think that's misleading because it's pretty clear who's owning the master plan and it's not us.
I see this as sort of we're all in the same island with one of everything, not like the vineyard with six of everything. I remember talking about the crossover and it's inevitable. Like, no matter what, you can't help but have that crossover that happens. Whether it's at a planning board meeting or a planning commission meeting, having the consultants coming here. The thing out at Nantucket Inn, I mean, you sort of can't help it. Like, it's, which is it? You know, it's both somewhat in some ways, and then, but it is a planning board activity, yes, but it's kind of mixed. And so I'm not concerned about it. It is, you know, it's a technicality issue, in my opinion.
Christina?
I guess I would just like to say, I know there's been a lot of conversation in the past about, like, you know, the NPDC is responsible for the master plan. And then we're like, no, we are not. It's the planning board. And so it does state that it's led by the planning board. I guess I would just like some periodic updates on the master plan at this meeting, because you all on the planning board are all very familiar with it, but not all of us sit on the planning board. So for me to say that I support it, I learned more about the master plan at a presentation to the land bank than I've ever gotten from here.
That's a good point. I think because I have been trying to have different speakers come in, that would be great, is maybe we should have someone come in and do like an overview. And so I think that is a really good point. We could do that to get like a kind of readout for everybody on this commission. So I think we can invite someone and have them do.
Yeah, and I think that's why, because so many of you are on the planning board, that you're like, oh, I know all about it, but I don't know anything about it. Like, your presentation was the first I knew anything about the master plan. Which was a great presentation. You could come and do it here.
Yeah.
But, you know, we don't, there are people on this board that, you know, to say that we all support it, not all of us are familiar with it. So I
Yeah.
think that this might be kind of what Hillary's point is.
That's a good point. So we'll have someone come as a guest and give a, you know.
Madam Chair, this-
Or else, but someone as a guest, right? We're saying like, no, but I mean, like, when we had the consultant, you know what I mean, like.
Did you feel like we were talking about it?
Judy Barron.
We'll have a guest, but we'll have them guest speak on this topic.
Or as an alternative. You know, we talked earlier on about how valuable joint meetings between different boards have become. This might be one where a joint meeting with the planning board would be valuable, because as far as I can see with the master plan, we are coming down to the short strokes, you know, and this is the time, because it's been about getting public comment and comment from everybody, and, you know, a lot of great work's been done. But it is coming to the point now where this is gonna get written in stone. So, you know, you might want to think about a joint meeting, but for that.
We could have one right now.
You're kind of singing my song like the Vineyard, you have to go to 6 different towns.
Yeah.
I mean, can I just ask you, Leslie, you've been around a long time. Okay, sorry, Madam Chair, I just jumped right now.
Hold on,
Sorry,
wanted to speak.
go ahead, sorry. So old.
I think what we're talking about is the language in the report. There's two topics here. There's how do we describe what kind of support has been offered to the commission, and it is staff time and financial support have been offered from the commission to the master planning process.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about. Now, whether or not we should be updated on a more regular basis, or it's clear we're not responsible ultimately for doing the master planning process or any, but because of the intersection of our departments, staff time and our financial resources have been lent to the master planning process. Maybe a better way to phrase this, it's less confusing, because when you use the word support, it does imply that we've discussed it and voted to support something that apparently everybody feels that we haven't, nor frankly, is it in our purview to do that. So I think we split the two different things. And I think, to Christina's point, getting some more updates for those of us who are on the commission that aren't on the planning board is useful. Thanks.
Agree.
She said it better than me. I'm done. That's perfect.
Any other changes?
So I would just suggest that we say the NPDBC continued to support the new and updated area plans. And then in the part where you talk about the financials, you mentioned that we gave financial support to the master plan. So we would strike everything from the ongoing progress of the master plan update being led by the planning board. As well as, we'll just say the NPDC continue to support the new and updated area plans.
I didn't bring a Word version of this to edit at the table, but I will work on something that gets at your point.
Yeah.
And yeah, for all the reasons, I appreciate the discussion.
Any other changes?
Thoughts?
All right, do I have a motion?
Oh, Brooke has her hand up.
Oh, Brooke, sorry.
I forgot to take it down.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay,
With
second,
the changes. Oh, the-
Yeah, no,
What
I
else?
should approve with the changes.
second? Anyone?
Second,
Okay, John, motion by Mike, seconded by John. Christina? Aye. Nat?
Aye.
John?
aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Hillary?
Aye.
Liza? Aye. Bert? Brooke?
Aye.
And as the chair, I also vote aye. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the ratification of the vote from the August meeting regarding the contract amendment, the building now.
So we have amendment number 2 to the Weston Sampson contract. That was posted on your agenda with less than 48 hours notice, so you just need to ratify your approval of that contract amendment.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to ratify the vote.
Okay, second?
Second.
A motion by Brooke, second by Mike.
Oh, well, I just had a question when that came before us before about exactly, remember I said, and you said, yeah, I think so. I just didn't know if you had a chance to tell us, like, I think what we wanted was in the build out study, it was going to put together what was in the sewer needs area, was going to include what was in the master plan, and so that we would have a view of the build out potential across the island. Is that what they're doing?
We have the final, so I will get a link out to you all so you can take a look at it.
And it has all that,
Yeah.
that it should have that.
Yeah.
All right, Christina on Brooke's motion.
Aye.
Nat,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Hillary, aye, Liza, aye, Bert,
Aye.
Brooke,
Aye.
and as the chair, I vote aye. All right, next item on the agenda is discussion of items contained within the 2025 goals and initiatives, which were approved at the March 24th, 2025. So I guess this is like a big.
Yeah, it's a bit of an update, and then, I also thought that we would include the enabling legislation update you all asked for last time as part of this. So you have in your packet, it's really dark over here. You have in your packet the document from March, the initiatives that the commission voted to move forward throughout the year. And because I think the enabling legislation is probably going to have the most discussion, let's skip over that one for now, and we'll come back to that. So under, thank you, I can see. So under transportation planning, and I'm not gonna read through all of these, but I think you all know that we, are providing regional voices for issues affecting Nantucket. Mike's been going to a lot of the Cape Cod bridges meetings that are off island. He's been going to other transportation, Mass stop meetings, going to, the monthly transportation program manager meetings in Worcester. He's very, very involved. We had a lot of work on the vessel speed reduction rule that took up a lot of our time back in the summer.
I would just note, one of the things that Mike has been doing, I didn't see it in here, and I just want to add is Mike's also been working very closely with a lot of the local boards and commissions. I know on the historical commission, for instance, he's been coming to a lot of our meetings lately. So he's been doing a lot of public engagement and outreach, and I just think maybe we want to add that because, thank you, Mike, if he might not, should be. But, oh, he's there. But, just thank you, Mike. I think that's also something that's important is just, he's been making time to come meet with these different boards and commissions and make sure they know what's going on. He's getting a lot of feedback from us, so I just thought maybe we'd want to add something like that.
All right, Mike's doing a great job continuing his work with MassDOT. You know, you all have talked about a lot about the roundabout. The rotary realignment into a roundabout at Milestone. We've had a lot of discussion about a potential roundabout or some sort of intersection realignment at Nobodier and other projects, but those are the two main ones. Mike just worked on a grant with Leah Hill related to coastal resiliency, so that falls into this category. He's constantly working with the select board on various initiatives. You know, some are more locally focused, like working on, you know, parking issues and that sort of thing, and then others are broader focused. Long range planning, we'll just skip over to that one. There's that word support again, supporting the planning board with their efforts to update the master plan, which we just talked about, staffing, funding. And maybe there will be other things as we, you know, continue on that process. The neighborhood area plans this year, you voted to accept Monomoy in town. Nantucket's nearly finished, thankfully. We have two others that are really anxious to get started that I have put off until we can wrap up what we have going on. But Surfside has been wanting to
Update, you mean?
to update, yeah.
Gonna say.
They've been wanting to update their area plan for quite some time. Brent Point wants to update their area plan. Both of those are fairly dated, especially the Brent Point plan. And that could sort of really tie into the master plan because some of the zoning districts down there have been identified to be phased out, so. And some work was already done and while we're talking about area plans, I didn't have a chance to say this during the Nantucket presentation, but I think they may be the most or one of the most successful area plans and getting some of their initiatives approved through zoning. They have the Village Height Overlay District, that was because of Nantucket's plan. The swimming pools, that started in Nantucket.
A special permit.
Their special
With the
permit, yeah.
FDR.
And probably some other things I can't think of, but I think they're the sort of poster child for the area plan and getting their advisory recommendations into regulatory avenues. Continuing to support boards, committees, commissions where we can. I mean, that's just ongoing. Supporting community initiatives of regional concern. You know, we are able to provide technical assistance to the municipality through the DLTA grant. One example, we were able to provide some funding to the municipal water extension over in Surfside. There's a couple of letters in your packet that I signed on behalf of the commission for other regional planning agency directors through MARPA signed on to support certain types of legislation. One, for example, would reserve a portion of the marijuana tax to be used for municipalities as a funding source for municipal building improvements. That's meant to help the local municipalities. I think being part of MARPA is really, really great. And we're exposed to a lot of legislation and a lot of initiatives that we may not otherwise even be aware of. Pedestrian and vehicular transportation projects identified in the long-range transportation plan. And we're always, you know, working on those things. We have the Tom Nevers bike path that Mike's working on. What else, Mike? I was just looking at your presentation. But we're doing a presentation on October 22nd to the select board to talk about the plus department, and we all have a separate section. So anyway, we're familiar with what Mike's working on. I'm working cooperatively.
I would just note that other than the very fun social media outreach that I know you all love to watch, me participate in, we're also working on a travel demand forecast model. That's been something that's been in the works for 5 years. So that's one of the initiatives this next year that we're going to be working on that let's just help review proposals for.
Great.
All right, so working with the Historical Commission, I thought that was a great presentation from Holly earlier. Any section 106 review, we work cooperatively with them on. Advocating on behalf of the Nantucket region. I just mentioned, the MARPA letter writing campaign that we participate in. Legislative issues, it's sort of more of the same here, working through MARPA, advocating as the regional planning agency. And as the RPA, like with seasonal communities, for example, Nantucket wouldn't have a voice at that table if it weren't for us being an RPA. The Rural Policy Advisory Council, those things that come up through that is because we're the RPA. So, there's lots of constantly, working on and involved with that don't have, a starting point and an ending point. It's just always something. Yep. So then that takes us back to the enabling legislation. At your last meeting, you all talked about starting the public outreach process for that. And maybe Mike or Megan share. Mike had a really great meeting with the communications office. Staff person Florencia Rulo to come up with a little outline for us to, start this process leading up to town meeting. I had a meeting with Mike and the town's PR consultant, Pierce Cote, to talk about maybe how they could help with our messaging and really making sure that we're getting clear, concise, understandable information to the public so that, we can make something that's somewhat complicated, easier to understand. So I don't know where that's going to go. I think there's scope, maybe a lot more than we need. And I think Florencia and her team can do a lot of that work. So the sketch is on the screen. We would start with, again, like trying to get who's the planning commission? What do we do? Why do we need to make these changes? How can you help? We would be doing some videos. Of course, the legislation draft would be available for comment, I think, throughout this time. And then we would be doing some video clips. We would have some of you, we would have staff. And then, of course, there'd be public hearings leading into town meeting with the finance committee. So that's that in a nutshell. But Mike is meeting with Florencia again on Wednesday morning to talk a little bit more about this and how to get us started with something, tangible that we can start getting out to the public. And I think, as you all know, Mike loves to make a TikTok, so I think he'll be great, point of contact to help sort this through.
Yeah, so I don't think this is really what we discussed when we talked at the meeting about education and engagement about the NPEDC's preferred legislation, which for the record, I don't support. I support either the Bill S-21 or a compromise legislation, which I proposed to you. I remember distinctly people at this table saying, I support going forward with a public, I suggested we talk about the compromise, and the decision of the commission was, I support going forward with public engagement if we are really having a dialogue with the public and talking with them about, what you guys have come up with, which has never once had a public hearing where anyone, including myself, could come and talk about why there might be some things that people wouldn't want to vote for in that legislation. So this looks like a PR, some might even say it looks like propaganda, telling people why they should support the legislation. It is a filming, it is educational messages, it's not dialogue with the community, and it's not convening people in a community, whether informally or in public hearing. And I don't think that's what, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I said, I can work with this. I like this idea that we're gonna have dialogue and have people be able to come and hear and discuss it. That's not what this is. This is like getting the PR group to tell you how to sell people on something. I thought that wasn't what we agreed to. Or what you all decided, I mean.
It's just an outline for where the discussion starts, I think.
Yeah, it's making a video.
I mean, I don't think this is all about making a video, to be honest. I think that it really is.
Community awareness short video.
I
That's
don't,
what this is
again, I don't
about.
think
Two
this is
different
all
video
about
segments.
making videos. I think the key is, the first bullet, if you look at it, is what we do, who's involved in the proposed changes. Like, if that's not educating and helping people understand what the changes are, I don't know what is. I mean, if we don't want to make it a video, I mean, I'm not necessarily married to that versus the other, but I think the key is we do need to make sure people understand what our changes are.
Just jump in
Yeah.
real quick. Like, the thought here is if we don't start with some educational component,
Like what
then
is
we're
it?
not going to get
Yeah.
people interested
I love
in
that one.
coming
Yeah,
to
because
talk with us in the first place. Like, they need to understand what's going on. Otherwise, it's just gonna be us posting an agenda and no one shows up.
No, it
you know?
shows up.
yeah,
That's right.
and there's a lot of misinformation out there, so I do think it's fair that we start with people understanding what we do as a commission, who's involved. Like, I think we do need to start.
Yeah. No, thank you, Madam Chair. No, I also agree, and I think one of our conversations was getting the Civic League, like going to them and having, the 25, 26 organizations, associations. Be able to ask questions, weigh in. I mentioned that I had a friend that is at the Westmore Club, and they asked Dave and I to come visit. But then S21 came in and we were like, all right, we'll just wait, see where that goes, and then we'll bring it back. So I think that, and I've even had a friend at the Nantucket Yacht Club, then they would love it for us to come forward. So I think there's ways, and that's just a couple of cases, but I think there's ways that we can do this. I didn't think this was gonna be limited to a couple short videos.
Yeah,
I think it's going out and sitting and standing in front of people and saying,
Yeah.
this is what we want to do, this is what's gonna happen, answer questions and go forward, so.
so I think maybe what we should do is, this is just outlining this piece, which is apparently about the video. Maybe we can get an outline of a more general of maybe what meetings would be involved as well and other educational tools, because I agree, I don't think it's just about doing a video, and a lot of these community meetings will be really important. And John,
So in our outreach then, I mean, we are, and perhaps this is correct, but we are not acknowledging at all that we have something up at the State House, a citizens article at the State House that has a different point of view to this. But there has been a compromise, at least, sent to this board that we haven't really discussed.
well, I think the thing is,
Well, if I
in
may-
order
if I
for
may
us to
finish.
talk about the compromise, though, we still need to talk about our option before we even get to whether or not we're
Well,
compromising.
trying to get to my point, Madam Chair, which is when we're out there, are we going to at least frame the fact that there are two approaches to this, or are we just going to put this out with no reference at all to the S21? That's because it seems to me that the elephant in the room is we have this, but there is already a home rule petition, and there is a compromise that has been suggested but not really discussed fully. And so I wish that in the spirit of openness, that somehow that we at least acknowledge that somehow. Because this is just, we have this, and as if there is nothing else out there, and that's not true.
I don't know if staff, if you want to comment.
I'll just listen.
I thought we sat down and had a conversation and had two meetings. And then Barry and I think Megan, you were there, had a separate meeting. So, and then we asked, like, can you just wait? And instead it went to town meeting, so. Listen, I wanted to work, trying to figure out something that would work for everyone. And it came on the deadline of getting it in for town meeting and it moved forward, so. We'd said, let's finish our work, we still open to the public, other than John Carl. You know, here we are, but to that point, I think we said we would wait and see where it got to, and it got to. Voted in by the state house for further study. So at that point, okay, well, let's see what we're gonna do with ours. Because we all know that's kind of like it's not going any further, so let's get ours going. And we voted as a board. Hillary, you were not on the board at the time, unanimously to move forward with this. So that's why I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. I
Yeah.
think we did try and have this conversation, had a conversation, and it got to a deadline, and then the door was
Well,
shut. I felt for that, so.
Yeah,
that's
what you
the
just,
perspective.
is what you just said though, true, it's not going, you said it's not going any further.
It's for further study, that's.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's not going.
Okay, right. You said it's not going.
What's,
Okay.
what you.
We're not gonna spend time debating that. I think I'll call on you in a second, but I wanna make a statement. I think that since there has been an opportunity to present a different option, it went however it went. That stood on its own and did its own process. I think we deserve, as a board, to also have our own process separate from that, because the other option got to do that. We also have the right to talk about our option separate of other things. That doesn't mean there's not gonna be discussion of other things at some point, and there's gonna be public feedback, but I think when we're talking about this is talking about the work that we all did in bringing this work forward and not mixing it with all these other things, because those are two different discussions, I think. And so I think talking about this and letting it stand for what it is one thing. I think talking about moving forward and other things, that's a separate discussion. So I just think we should be very clear about that, understand it before we go anywhere. Christine.
I do agree with you. We worked really hard and came up with something, and that has not been presented to the public. So the public does need to see because basically the public has not heard from the NPEC in what their alternative solution is. And so that's where I think the video and the, simplified explanation is beneficial. I do think that we need to be prepared. We can talk about that, that's fine. But the next step after that is presenting it to the public and getting out there and having public forums. In that public forum, I think we have to be prepared to address, yes, there are two separate options out there. And when we're asked, well, what are you doing to try to come to a compromise? I don't think we can lean back and say we tried to before, because there is another compromise on the floor. So then the question comes, and I completely can stand behind going that far with the public. And then the public saying like, well, okay, so you guys can come to an agreement? And then we restart that conversation. I just asking the question, does it make sense to go through all that exercise if we know that we can sit down and have a conversation about that now? So that's all. I mean, I agree that the public has not heard from us, and that's important for the public to hear the presentation that we have. So,
And you haven't heard from the public, if I may. I mean, that's the point of a public hearing. It's two ways.
Nat,
Can't even believe we're making such a big deal out of this.
yeah,
Nobody knows who we are.
I
Okay,
agree.
so what if I said, I'm gonna make a motion to leave the planning commission the way it is? And we vote, all in favor, say aye, 9-1, or 10-9-2, or something. I mean, I'm going back to how this all started. It started with the land bank being a member. Didn't get into any of the other stuff. Okay? On a freezing cold day in Wisconsin, I'm sitting in my truck. This is how we started this land bank thing. And we still haven't got the land bank technically on the planning commission, which it should have been 10 years ago. If anyone thought of it, I don't know why it didn't happen. but nobody thought of it. But this is housekeeping, okay? This is not a big deal. We're making this into the biggest thing ever, like we're like the new select board or the new town council or mayor or what was the other one called? The representative form of government. Remember that little idea that went out the window? Oh my God. So people, the more you make a big deal out of this, the more murky it gets. The state is what matters the most with this commission. How the state sees Nantucket. We have a seat at the table, as they used to tell me. That's the key to this whole entire NPDC situation. In fact, one year they forgot who we were. They actually left us out. Couldn't believe it. I think we compromised on the county voting for the at-large. That was a compromise, because that wasn't our original idea.
Well, and that's not how it is today.
No, I know that.
No, well, I'm saying
I meant-
there's been this talk, like people, we have been compromising
I
on
meant-
creation.
I meant our draft is a compromise, and a lot of the stuff that we've decided to do, it took a long time to get there. Giving up the appointing your own at-large members, to me, it was pretty simple with the county doing it. But to make it elected is another whole entire conversation, which I know that's not what we're gonna talk about right now. I'm just saying, you see what happens with elections here with boards that should be appointed versus the other way around, okay? Like, we have the Concom is more regulatory than anything, really. I mean, they can kind of do a lot of things that you don't realize, but they're appointed. ZBA is appointed, right? But we're gonna have the entry level position of an at-large member of the MPDC be elected. It's just, nobody's gonna do that. That is just not necessary to go that far. I just feel that if we drive this bus too far, it's gonna become too big of an issue that it's not a big issue. If we try to make it into a big, huge deal, it's gonna be like, why are we doing all this? To me, we've changed a few things in my time here with the DPW. There's been a couple of other little changes that have happened. I just feel that what we did to put on paper in our draft is pretty good, I think. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with 13 100%, but I'm willing to accept that because of what everybody else wanted. So there's a lot of compromise in that draft legislation. But the confusion of what the NPDC is to the public, Hillary, people don't get up every morning and wonder what the NPDC is doing. But I can tell you what.
Besides,
But Hillary, we have no power to do the things that get sort of fostered and sort of alluded to in big gatherings like town meeting or others, where it's like, we can't really even do this, but yet people think we can. I just get nervous about pushing the gas pedal so far with public outreach that people will be wondering what we're doing this for. That's my concern.
Well,
Okay?
I think you should plan the public outreach that you think is right, but I think that, obviously town meeting is going to decide what this commission should look like, or they're going to decide what they want to ask the state. So you have voted legislation, which I have told you I think is fatally flawed, and that I'd like to tell you why at a public hearing or at a meeting with that on the agenda if you want. I think it's fatally flawed and it won't pass. I have suggested that we come to some compromise, but if the chair would like to put that on the agenda, Madam Chair, you can do that. But at this point, going forward with a video about your legislation that you've never had a public hearing on, you've never taken.
We have had public.
You have not had a public hearing on this legislation.
Yeah, we had
All these meetings.
all these meetings are public hearings.
All
We've had public
on the
hearings.
owl.
You have had public meetings and you have not taken public comment. I have been at meetings with my hand raised and not been called on multiple times. Other people have been here to talk and not been called on. It's not the same as a public hearing. So, I respectfully disagree about the importance of this commission. Obviously, for 5 years, I've been seeking
Don't say
to
what I didn't say.
reform.
I wasn't saying we're not important. I'm saying this, at the state level is where this committee's rubber meets the road. And to muddy Nantucket,
I
it's
just.
not good for
I
the
just think
state
it would be
relationship.
a little better for everybody if we, instead of bringing, you know, a new legislation that you happen to like, but have not, you know, might change your mind on if you had some more extensive public feedback on. If we talked about the compromise, and maybe talked about bringing that to town meeting, I think that you'd have more success, look better, and it would be successful, and it would be good for the island to do that.
All right, Mike, you.
Okay, and so I was just gonna say, from the public outreach standpoint, I think it's important to use all kinds of avenues, videos, whatever it is public outreach. We can get as many outlets as we can would be great. When the Conservation Commission was updating its regulations, they were all public meetings. Not a single person ever attended for years. We did have a public hearing at the end where they voted the regulation of this, the second of that public hearing, but it is a public process where people are participating in the meeting. I hear what you're saying, but not a lot of people are that interested in showing up for these meetings.
Joe and then Christina.
Not gonna Christine.
Christina.
I was just gonna recommend that in the public outreach, we include public hearings, we can, include outreach to different civic organizations, and that we document what the
Yeah.
public is saying, and we bring it back for discussion in this meeting.
I agree.
So I just think we need to
Yep.
make the public outreach more robust, to include more public comment, more options to hear from the public, and we bring that back for
Yeah.
discussion.
And,
I mean, we have Zoom, we have YouTube, we have minutes, we have a website, we have everything. I'm not trying to be mean right now. Gonna be respectful as possible. I don't remember attending one of your meetings. I don't remember any of your conversations. I don't remember any participation.
The town meeting.
yeah, but.
No, but that-
did you have a
there's no
whole
setting
series
up
of
for-
meetings where you got our feedback? I mean, did you bring your proposal to this commission and have
So
some,
many,
like,
so many.
we
times.
thought about it?
I brought I brought it to this commission so many times. I have so many emails and I have a whole
All right.
folder.
Anyway,
So,
moving
no,
on.
I have a whole folder
Okay, let's
of my
let's
emails.
move on.
with
This is not the point of this discussion. Let's move on. Are
We will
there
be able to
any?
hear that in public hearing, and then the public can come and talk, and we can get that feedback.
Yeah, and it's not about rehashing the past. It's about, you know, talking about the ideas in the two competing legislations, one which was passed twice at town meeting and one which you'd like to pass at town meeting. And, you know, the voters will decide.
Okay, moving on. Anybody have any committee reports? All right.
So just to wrap that up, what is the,
I think we are, I will clear.
Okay, great.
What our next steps are is Mike is going to meet with Florence and staff. He's going to talk with them. We are going to get a outline of all of the different items, but we have recommended to include a couple of these public forums. I know Leslie, and they'll bring back that more robust plan of discussion. Did I miss anything?
No, but, you know, time is ticking, and Mike and I talked about that today. It's September 29th. You all meet once a month, which, I mean, you could always have a special meeting, but just stick to the once a month thing for a second. You know, we have to get the ball rolling, so.
Yeah, well,
can't-
we've already voted as, well, yeah, we've already
We don't
voted
have
as a
to-
commission to start, so I think
Okay, so
they'll
we're,
bring it back to us, but in the meantime, they will be doing work on the.
in the meantime, how about we work with Florencia and we'll work with you and the vice chair, and we try to get some things going, because we need to do that, and we'll schedule public hearings and we'll,
All of it.
you know, we'll do all of that. I mean, I don't want anyone to think that at the staff level, we don't think getting the public input is important. I mean, it's vital, but we have to start getting a message out there, yeah, for people to want to give us their input.
Would you like some type of vote from this commission to go ahead with what you kind of recommended, but the commission is also asking to include, bring back a more robust, so you can continue with the work that you're doing, but you can
I don't
also
think
add
we
to
need
it.
We don't need a vote.
Or you just need the recommendation, I'm just asking.
Have a vote.
Okay.
So we can say we did it.
All right. Does anybody want to give me a motion?
I motion that the staff continues forward with what's been presented, but also makes a more robust, agenda, including public hearings and public outreach at different venues, so that we can review it next month and continue to keep the ball going.
Second. Okay,
I just have a
Christina.
discussion on the motion. Did the town manager approve the comms involvement, or has anybody talked to the town manager?
Yeah, the town manager is the manager of the staff that they're talking with about the common stuff, so I would believe.
And she,
And Mike, you can confirm, but I would believe that the town manager would be aware.
is the town manager? Yeah, approving it?
There was a nod. Is that?
Mike? You're,
Yeah, I have weekly meetings with comm staff about a lot of outreach at the regional level. So yeah, they've been cooperative. I lean on Leslie to see if Libby is, fully aware of the outline and the approach, but the services of communications is always been available to the region.
So I did not specifically have a conversation with the town manager about this, but again, the communications office helps us with really whatever we need help with. We have in the Plus MOU that we provide services to the town. In exchange, they provide services to us. This seems like standard day-to-day work to me. And,
Yeah.
the communications person does report to the town manager. So if she had an issue with her assisting us, then I'm sure that the town manager would let me know. Okay.
Brooke?
I'd like to reiterate, we have no role in micromanaging the communications department or whether or not her work is authorized by the town manager. That is not in our purview. We should leave that alone. Thank you.
Okay. So going back to the motion, Christina made a motion, Joe, you seconded, Christina,
I,
Nat,
Aye.
John,
aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Hillary,
No.
Liza,
Aye.
Bert,
Aye.
Brooke,
Aye.
and as the chair, I vote aye. All right, I will take the motion to adjourn.
No,
No.
committee reports.
Oh, I thought,
She asked and no one had it.
yeah,
Oh, you did?
yeah,
Oh, I
yeah.
didn't. Sorry.
I just wanted to say I'll be bringing seasonal communities to the next meeting.
Okay, great. All right, any others?
Motion to adjourn, yeah.
Okay, motion to adjourn,
Second.
second, motion adjourned by Joe, second by Mike. All right, Christina. Aye. Nat,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Hillary,
Aye.
Liza,
Aye.
Bert,
Aye.
Brooke.
Aye.
And as the chair, I vote aye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
You.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you, Mike.